So, warm welcome. My name is Dr. Katja Lascht, and a warm welcome to the attendees to the third Indo-German Research Day. It's the third edition which we are running this year, and we are really looking forward to this morning, respectively afternoon in India. The Indo-German Research Day is brought to you by the German Center for Research and Innovation and its supporters. Its supporters are 23 German institutions who are active in India and who are connecting in India-German research cooperation. Amongst them are universities, funding bodies, but also non-university research institutions, and all of them are joining today hand to offer you an excellent and informative day. The day gives you the opportunity to get a comprehensive insight into their institutions, into funding opportunities, into cooperation projects, and much more. As I said, I'm leading the German Center for Research and Innovation, but also the German Academic Exchange Service, which is also present here on the platform. At the German Center for Research and Innovation, we are responsible for connecting the German and Indian research and innovation ecosystem, and we are a platform for thematic exchange and networking. So we provide information and advice on research landscapes, funding opportunities, international research cooperation, and current developments in science policy, and I think you see this on today's panels and the interactive session. We are a science diplomacy initiative actually of the Germany's Federal Foreign Office, and we are managed by the German Academic Exchange Service, better known in India as SCNAT. With this event today, we bring you a platform that allows you to connect with researchers and research institutions. If you are interested in funding your research stay in Germany, are looking for research cooperation partners projects, are looking for partner institutions or new contacts, this you will all find on the platform, and this will be possible during the talks today and also in between the talks, as we have 20 institutions at 2 interactive sessions who will offer their institution profiles to you and the opportunity to have one-to-one chats with them. The interactive sessions will take place between 3 and 4 o'clock and 5 and 6 o'clock Indian Standard Time, and in the morning then on German time. How to reach these interactive sessions? Click on the program or on the interactive session panel, which you see on the left-hand side on your menu, and then you can just jump right away in the sessions. Who we have with us, just to name some institutions: the German Research Foundation, CSIR, the Council of Scientific Industrial Research in India, EMBO is with us, Eurexis, who gives information on European funding schemes, the Fraunhofer Gesellschaft, but also universities like the RWTH Aachen, the Käser Institute of Technology, and many more. The Indo-German Research Day brings you also 3 interactive panels, where international experts will discuss topics of high relevance, and then you can also ask the questions in these panels. The first one, which we do immediately, is shifting paradigms in research and talking about equitable partnerships in research, and we will tackle also the topic of decolonization of research. In the second panel, we will discuss the impact of AI on researchers and research institutions, and in the last general panel discussion today, we will focus on funding agencies, their strategies, and also see how they support Indo-German cooperation. The sessions 2 and 3 will start at 2 o'clock Indian Standard Time and session 3 at 4 o'clock Indian Standard Time. More than 600 people are on the platform today. They have registered, and you connect and interact them via chat. So if you see on your menu on the left-hand side, you see the list of participants, and all those who have enabled the chat function, you can reach out directly. So the profile of most of these participants are visible to you. In the document section, which is on the platform, you will find further information, and after the event, we will also upload the presentations, the recording of the sessions, and a lot of more information on the topics which we are discussing today. And finally, as everybody has a busy schedule and you might not be able to attend 5 hours, the platform will be open after the event for you to check out the panel discussions and the profiles of the participants, and you even can touch base with the participants afterwards. Fostering and promoting international research cooperation is the focus and the aim of the Indo-German Research Center, and that's why I thought we will open this year's Indo-German Research Days with a fireside chat on shifting paradigms in research. Now, let me give you a short lead into the discussion. So what we have witnessed over the last decades, 50, 60 years, that the research systems worldwide transformed from a polar research system to a multipolar research system, as research systems were developed. So it's not longer Europe and the US who are the center of research and of innovation. We are facing at the moment a multipolar system, and also a lot of developing countries have ramped up their research system, and we see an increase in research cooperation with these countries. However, in research, there pertains a global north-south divide in countries' resources, including access to data and scientific capacities. And very often, researchers from the global south have reduced influence over content and the content of research projects, while nevertheless, a lot of funding comes still from the global north. So even today, we are at the risk that global research partnerships are imbalanced. On the other hand, the agenda for the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 enhances and argues for a balance between the developed countries and developing countries. So thus implementation of Sustainable Development Goals demands a coherent collaboration to transform society across all countries, and we should not see divides. So this is a bit of contradictory what is ongoing. So over the last years, we have also seen a discussion on equitable research partnerships and the call for the critical examination and transformation of research practices, methodologies, and structures to dismantle the influence of the Western world, or to say it in the words of Rajesh Tandon, who is one of our panelists today in one of his articles, he said the fact that the ideas of white men just from a few countries, Italy, France, England, Germany, and the US, came to dominate the world of knowledge. This involves recognizing and addressing different aspects, such as challenging dominant paradigms, valuing indigenous and local knowledge, capacity building, accountability, and policy and structural change. And I hope we will manage in today's discussion to address these questions. So what we will do is we will ask where these and other pointers, or where we are standing in the discussion on creating more equitable partnerships. What is the approach in India and Europe? What do we need to change on a policy, institutional, but also individual level to overcome biases, and how we can ensure a knowledge diplomacy? This we will address in the next couple of minutes. So I'm really glad that I'm joined today by the two eminent speakers, and let me briefly introduce them. Dr. Rajesh Tandon is an internationally acclaimed leader and practitioner of participatory research and development, and he's the founder president of the Participatory Research in Asia, a global center for participatory research and training. He's also the co-chair of the UNESCO Chair in Community-Based Research and Social Responsibility in Higher Education since 2012. And has been active in various bodies, for instance, as head of the Forum for Indian Development Cooperation, but also in worldwide networks. And I think he's a very good representative himself, because he has been educated in India and the US, and then also left teaching to support and champion the cause of building organization and capacities of marginalized through their knowledge, learning, and empowerment. So the accountability, indigenous knowledge, all these points he is covering. And he has taught a lot of courses, and he has been a long research activity and teaching courses in South Africa, UK, Canada, Italy, Malaysia, Philippines, and Cambodia. So Rajesh, warm welcome to the panel. And you're connected with our second panelist from Switzerland, Fabian Käser. So it happens that the two of them are at the moment in Bern, if I'm not completely mistaken. So Rajesh, warm welcome and greetings to Switzerland. Our second panelist is Fabian Käser, who is the head of the Swiss Commission for Research Partnerships with Developing Countries, KFPE, at the Swiss Academies of Sciences. He is committed to strengthen effective and fair research cooperation between research institutions in Switzerland and institutions in LMICs, and he's interested in Switzerland's role for global sustainable development. And to strengthen research collaborations, the KFPE has developed a guide with 11 principles for transboundary research partnerships, and I think we will tackle this in the session. He holds a PhD in social anthropology and has been active in research projects from Kenya and Bolivia. So warm welcome, Fabian, also to you.
Thank you very much.
And I think that leads us directly in the discussion. And I would like to start with you, Fabian, if you could give us a kind of opening statement. So you are heading the Commission for Research Partnerships with Developing Countries, which promotes equitable research partnerships with institutions in developing and transition countries. It constitutes an alliance of Swiss institutions that engage in such research partnerships for the benefit of global cooperation and sustainable development. Now, why the Swiss Academy of Sciences felt the need to establish such a commission? And maybe you could give us also a brief outlook. Where do you see the discussion on decolonization, shifting paradigms, equitable partnerships with the Global South from a European perspective? Over to you, Fabian.
Yes, thank you very much. That's actually very interesting. I think why we have this alliance or why we work together here as Swiss research organizations. The alliance was really found by research organizations in Switzerland who worked together with research partners from low and middle income countries or from developing countries. And they all faced kind of similar challenges. They all had the vision or they're convinced that only by working together with research partners from developing countries on the basis of equitable partnerships and fair research collaborations, only through this we can enhance the quality of research collaborations. And by this we can also break down the barriers that hinder meaningful collaboration and lay the groundwork for research ecosystems that truly serve the global community. So to do such research collaborations on a fair and equitable basis, this can be a bit challenging, be it for partners from Switzerland, but also, of course, for partners from low and middle income countries. So instead, that every research organization in Switzerland reflect by themselves on how to do such research collaborations, they formed an alliance to really work together on how to do such equitable research partnerships that have an impact on the ground, but also on a global level. So this is why they joined force already in the 1990s to found this alliance and work together on how to do such research collaborations. And ever since, the topic of equitable research collaborations, on how to do research collaborations, has been on the agenda in Switzerland. And I assume, or I feel, in the last year, it has even grown on importance. And it's really on the agenda in Switzerland, but also on an international level in the EU or globally, on how to do or how to shift the paradigms of research collaborations, of international collaborations, from a northern-led, academic-led research collaboration to a more joint research collaboration where everybody can be included, where all voices can be heard, included, and brought to the table. So individual researchers, research institutions, but also research funding organizations are currently reflecting on the role on how they can contribute to shifting these paradigms and also on how to decolonize research collaborations. And the KFP, the Swiss Commission for Research Partnerships with Developing Countries, is involved in this discussion as this alliance of research organizations in Switzerland. It is really at our heart to allow these discussions or to provide a platform to enable such discussions on what it means to decolonize research collaborations. And last year, we organized a conference on decolonizing research collaborations. It was a half-day hybrid conference here in Switzerland to discuss with researchers from Switzerland, but also with researchers from developing countries, led also by researchers from developing countries, on what it means to decolonize research collaborations. And we had interactive workshops on the topic of decolonizing research collaborations. And it was really our aim to provide this platform to enable discussions to see the different topics of decolonizing research collaborations. And findings of these insights can also be found at our website. You can find maybe, or please could you put the link to our website to the chat so you can find more information at our website to what it means from different perspectives to decolonize research collaborations and also to find information on decolonized research collaborations. And of course, for us, it's important as we're a Swiss organizations led by Swiss research institutions to not lead the debate on decolonizing collaborations and shifting paradigms by only North or Swiss researchers, but really to include researchers from Kenya, Madagascar, Ghana, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Cote d'Ivoire to this debate on what it means to decolonize research collaborations.
Let me ask one brief question before we jump into the perspective of Rajesh, Fabian. So, I mean, when you think about Switzerland, it's not a colonial power, or not used to be a colonial power. So one would wonder the discourse of decolonization very often is connected and is very often carried forward by the former colonial or of superpowers. So is the discourse really in the Indian research or in the Swiss research landscape? So is there discussion ongoing? Do you have the feeling there is a large sensitization on all levels on the researcher in Swiss already, or is there still a lot of work to be done to raise the awareness of these issues amongst the researchers?
So the discussion is really taking up, and I think you're right with both. So the discussion is going on, and it's a nice, lively discussion here in Switzerland what it means to decolonize research collaborations, what Swiss researchers, Swiss research organizations, but also Swiss funding organizations can do with regard to decolonizing research collaborations. But on the other hand, there is still a long way to go. And I believe we're just on the start of this debate on what it means to decolonize research collaborations. But at least we have started with a good discussion, and with also actors that are open to this discussion, be it from research organizations, but also the funding organizations that are open to embark on this discussion on what it means to decolonize research collaborations. So we have a good start, but we have still a long way to go on decolonizing research collaborations.
I would say the same for Germany if you look into the German discussion. Now, Rajesh, that leads us to you. You have a long-standing career in research in both of the worlds, let me put it in that way. But you also have been active in numerous commissioning committees in India, worldwide. So I think you have quite a large perspective. So what is your perspective on the discussion of equitable partnerships in research? Maybe you could also give us a brief outlook on India, because my feeling in India very often when we discuss about decolonization with the colonial heritage which we are having, the British Empire which has been ruling India, very often goes into policy directions. And maybe you could give a bit of an outlook where the discussion is standing also in the research community in India. Rajesh, over to you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on the German Research and Innovation Day. It's a great opportunity to have such reflective conversations, and thank you for inviting me. My approach to research partnerships has been to start by asking the basic question about the purpose of research. Why do we produce new knowledge? And I think we produce new knowledge not just to write books or to publish journal articles, which are important, but also to bring about improvements in the lives of our people. We produce new knowledge which can change the conditions and the context in which our communities, our fellow citizens are living wherever they are. So I look at new research as production of actionable knowledge. And actionable knowledge always entails, therefore, partnerships, because unless we bring those who are involved in the context, in the situation, whose agenda or issues or concerns we are trying to analyze, action will not follow. The analysis of the research findings, if it becomes owned and shared with different stakeholders, then they can all join together to take necessary actions. Actions can be on the ground for practice, actions can be for policy, actions can be for refining development interventions, actions can be of different varieties. So when we talk about sustainable development goals, my experience is that the global goals are inspirational lighthouses. Actual improvement in any of those SDGs has to be local, contextual. Local, contextual, not just within a country, but within a region, within a location. Look at India, for example. Women's health in eastern region of Odisha and women's health in western Rajasthan both require new actionable knowledge, but contextually specific. The diets are different, the livelihoods are different, the climatic conditions are different. So it is important, if we want to achieve sustainable development goals, that we contextualize and localize our research in order to produce actionable knowledge. I believe that this kind of work is only beginning to happen in India. Community organizations, civil society groups, independent researchers, and some academics historically have been involved in this, but still bulk of the research funding and research careers are not seen in actionable knowledge. Research funding limits itself to publications of books and journal articles. Research funding requires predetermined definition of research questions and even research tools in advance. And we know that when we want to build partnerships with local communities, partnerships across stakeholders, we cannot go there with fixed project outlines of research. We have to be open and we have to be flexible. And most of the research funding in India still does not take this into account as it is internationally. And in the academic research careers, time spent in building partnerships and in working with local stakeholders to bring about change is not acknowledged. What is acknowledged only is the completion of the research report and some publications. I think these are universal challenges, and India is no different. But it is important that we address these collectively because they are not a country specific or a location specific, as Fabian was saying. It is not just German Research Council or German researchers or Swiss researchers or Indian researchers, but it's a phenomena which is international. We are all part of a research fraternity and we are reflecting together on the changes that we need to bring about. So, co construction of knowledge is being talked about, but its practice still is leaves much to be desired. The research we have done across countries on co construction practices still shows that in the final analysis, research questions and research tools are framed by academics and not by anybody else. So I think there is a need to move in that direction, but do it in a reflective and a thoughtful manner as opposed to in a pushy kind of a manner. We need to encourage people to think about their research practice and ask the question, what is the purpose of new research? What is the purpose of new knowledge in the framework of SDGs, and more so now in specific climate impacts that all of our countries, all of our communities are facing? It doesn't matter north or south, east or west.
Thanks a lot for introducing that perspective on the different layers in a way, not just geographically, but also on the layers of academia and then the beneficiaries of research and local communities and societies. I want to highlight to the audience, please put your questions up in the chat. We will take them up during our discussion, which we are having here. So feel free to, or if you want to have some comments, please put them up in the chats. Now, I would like to structure the discussion a bit, going maybe from a bit of a policy stakeholder perspective, governmental, institutional, then down to individual level, addressing these two different perspectives which you just have seen in the discussion today. So Fabian, your organization, the Swiss Academy for Sciences, also funding body, has published guidelines and questions for equitable research. Can be found on the website, I think 11 principles and 7 questions, if I'm not completely mistaken. So looking at an institutional level, so maybe at the governmental science policy, but also research funding level, what we can do and what we need to change to support equitable partnerships. So how do we need maybe frame research proposals and so on? So what do we need to adjust? And what is your learning from your discussions? What we should really change from the policy and from the institutional level?
Yes, so I think there is still many things to change also at the institutional, especially also at the policy level, at the funding level. First of all, I think it's really important to acknowledge that there are still power imbalances, that there are still things that we need to change. And this first step is already very important to really see that we need to have change for research collaborations and how we fund research collaborations and also how we will implement research collaborations that have a meaningful impact and not only produce books and publications, as Rajesh mentioned, that are important, but that research should go beyond. So at the funding level, I think the first or the important part is really that funding, as I mentioned, does not only fund research that produce scientific insights, that not only produce scientific results, but really to support funding that contributes to change towards sustainable development. And then secondly, to achieve this change, to really change also the way science is done, we really need to invest in capacity building in the global north, in Switzerland, in Germany, but also in low and middle income countries. Capacity building with regard on how to do research collaboration that has a true impact, on how to do research collaborations that do collaborations with local populations that are localized, that are locally rooted in a specific system. but also capacity building on how to do research, on how to do transdisciplinary research collaborations, interdisciplinary research collaborations, and transboundary research collaborations. The capacities that need to be built may be different in Switzerland, in Germany, or in India, but at all levels we need to have capacity building. And if we have funding programs that only fund research projects that produce results, maybe results to be implemented in practice, but do not contribute to capacity building, we won't go the next step to have meaningful researchers, to have capable researchers to do actually this research that we are needed today. And then when it comes to concrete research projects, we really need to have funding instruments that support or enable the building of equitable research collaborations, to build an equitable and fair research collaboration that allows to bring the different voices to be heard on the table, to negotiate them, to include different worldviews, visions, and perceptions. We really need to have sufficient time to build up mutual trust, to build up equitable collaborations. And if research funding demands or asks for first results to be published within a couple of months or weeks or whatever, this is not possible. So we need to have sufficient time, but also money to build up meaningful research collaborations for a project, but also over time. So to have research collaborations that last longer than just a research project. So we really have to have funding instruments that allow for such research collaborations to be equitable and fair, and then also to share the benefits of these research collaborations, not only for the researchers in Switzerland or Germany, but really to have to share the merits of the research collaborations among all researchers, and to have all researchers to be involved in the setting of the agenda on how to do research, on what to do research, and how to collaborate in a research project.
Let me maybe ask one question here. I mean, I'm working also for funding institution, the German Academic Exchange Service. We fund mobility. I would be interested if you changed that maybe in the Swiss funding. But whenever we push out funding schemes with our partners in developing countries, I've not seen very often that we design the funding schemes together with them. So we design the funding scheme, we push it out to the German institution. German institution applies for funding and onboards an Indian partner, let us say, and then here we go. Shouldn't we, and Rajesh, please jump in if you would like, shouldn't we take it up a level up? I mean, already when we design funding coming from the developed countries, but nevertheless onboarding our partners while designing the funding schemes, and not just then in the moment when the call is out and you look desperately for a partner, and then if you're lucky if you have a trustful partner, you're right. So what is your take on that?
No, I think this is really of utmost importance if it's possible, and we see now that this is also shifting a bit, that we develop joint funding programs, not only between research or not only between Switzerland and low and middle income countries, but maybe also to include practitioners, etc., so that the funding instrument or funding program is not only designed by some academics in the ivory tower somewhere in Switzerland or Germany, but that the funding instrument is really developed together with also funding organizations, for example, in India. And there, I think it's really important to not go the easy way and just include one or two experts from India or from a global south country to develop a funding program, but really to co-develop these funding programs with funding organizations, for example, in India or an African country or wherever, to really co-develop this funding instrument and not just include one or two voices from somebody from the global south to have the ticking box and yes, okay, we have included the south to develop this funding program, but really go the challenging way, the hard way to co-design these funding programs.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think we need to look also at the framework in a way. We get a lot of questions in regarding concrete questions regarding funding schemes and so on. So I will not take them up here, but we have a third panel where we introduce the funding agencies of India and Germany, the main players, starting at 5 o'clock Indian Standard Time, and we also have the institutions, because there are some questions coming in. How can I connect with the German partners? So take the opportunity of today. There are 20 institutions, a lot of them looking for partners, and step into the interactive session. I know there is a problem when institutions from India looking towards Germany reach out to them, want to cooperate, to address and to touch base with them, but please take this opportunity. Now, then you relate in your book to knowledge democracy. So the latest article. And and that we need to change our perspectives going away from the epistemological dominance of the North. So what would would be institutional practices, what we need to change on the ground in developing countries in India? Because I mean, I've seen sometimes also on an institutional level, a lot of intellectuals have been educated in the Western, in the West, they've come with PhD postdocs from the US or Europe. So what we need to change in Indian institutions, of course, we have been looking at Europe, that that we can step away from this dominance which we see, and maybe there is also a need of changing of behavior in the Indian system on an institutional and policy level.
Well, you know, 3 years ago, all the member countries of UNESCO signed a recommendation on open science. And those recommendations arose out of 3-4 years of extensive global conversation. And in my view, those recommendations are fairly revolutionary in two sense. Of course, we have been discussing open science in the form of open access to data, open infrastructure access, but the open science recommendations bring into fore open engagement with public and society and societal actors, and fourthly, open dialogue with multiple epistemologies. What does this mean, open dialogue with multiple epistemologies? The study that we recently did, called Bridging Knowledge Cultures, came out of this recognition that the way academics define knowledge is not necessarily the same way as communities and local actors define knowledge. For us as academics, knowledge is our business, our profession. For communities, knowledge is used for life. Knowledge is used to change life, improve life, protect life, and do actions related to life. We know in all societies there have been such knowledges. It is not just in the north or south, but all societies. Experiential knowledge, lived knowledge, practical knowledge. And now, if you take this recommendation of open science, recently International Science Council came around with its own proposition on what is transdisciplinary research. And transdisciplinary research in their approach now means not only bringing different disciplines together, but also bringing community actors and other stakeholders inside the research process. And this reflects what I was saying earlier. I believe our effort at addressing climate issues, SDG issues, will only succeed if we do transdisciplinary research context by context. And we may generalize research principles, but actionable knowledge cannot be universally generalized because the actors, the context, the culture, the economy, the politics varies substantially. A month and a half ago, along with Indian Institute of Science and along with South Asian Open Science Network, we convened 5-day sessions on understanding open science, and a number of researchers and research institutions participated. So why I am mentioning this is because, first of all, we have to relate these global consensus into national and institutional policy frameworks. The discussion on open science recommendations in the Indian context is still taking place. It is not the policy, open science policy, still not formalized. At the institutional level, Department of Science and Technology has been involved in systematization of community knowledge in health, in livelihood, but that work is so powerful, it is helping to prevent any uh, any effort to patent local knowledge without conforming to the community's own validation process. But their work is limited right now because it is limited to historically written or published documents. We also know that community knowledge is not always written up, experiential knowledge not written up in a, not even written up in a European language, English or French or German or Spanish, but it is not even written up in local Hindi or Tamil or Odia language. It is in culture, in language, in rituals, in practices. And a lot of that work of community knowledge is not yet properly into the domain of policy and regulation. People are hesitant to share their knowledge because they don't know what will happen to this. There is no regulatory mechanism. There is no requirement of sharing not just recognition but also benefits that accrue from them. And we know, so many cases in the Indian context. You are reading, Supreme Court has been active on this lately as well. So the point is that we want to respect, validate, strengthen local knowledge and its links to modern academic knowledge. The research establishment, whether in India or in Germany or Switzerland or in Uganda, all the leaders of research establishment and the design of research institutions is a post-colonial model. We we have taken up from Brits, somebody has taken up from German, somebody has taken up from Swiss, but it's a European colonial model of doing academic research and funding academic research. Now EU has expanded it, but that's what we are repeating in all our countries. And with the resource crunch in many countries of the global south, research funding is actually not nationally adequate or available, and that's why transnational and international partnerships become important. But this is where what Fabian has been saying, that while there is unequal power relationship in terms of expertise, capacities, and resources, once we recognize that inequality and we are committed to building a rebalanced, collaborative, fair, and equitable relationship, then we can work towards it. Our difficulty will arise when we are blind to power imbalances. And this is the point that I like Fabian's statement so important at this juncture.
Yes,
Rajesh,
actually, this
yeah,
acknowledging
go ahead.
power imbalances that matter the most, because once we acknowledge the power imbalances, that's when we can start to address the power imbalances, and that's where we can set off. It doesn't mean that we will reach power balance by just acknowledging it, but at least you can do the first step. And what I also liked about your talk now about we have really colonized our whole academic system, or the whole academic system is kind of part of a colonized world, and we need to unlearn, to decolonize research collaborations and the way we do research, and really start by including the communities, not only by including them to gather data, but already including them by doing or asking ourselves, what should we do research about, and really to start from the onset with local communities, with researchers from different disciplines and from different fields, different countries, on what actually research should be about, how to do research, which results matter to come towards sustainable development at the end.
Rajesh, let me go back. There's an interesting question in the chat. So how important do you think in this whole open science discussion, science communication is? No, reaching out also to the beneficiaries. So what role in this open science discussion, science communication should play, as this is also something which we see which is arising. No, and science communication is playing a more important role. So what would be your take on this, on the role of science communication in open science?
Yeah.
Essentially, the discussion on science needs to be taken forward in the academic institutions when we are training young scientists, we're training young researchers, helping them understand that knowledge resides outside the academia too, helping them appreciate the nature of that knowledge. And this is where preparation of young researchers is important. In the science communication field also, the bulk of the science communication so far has been academic knowledge being communicated. This is what was happening throughout the pandemic. And you saw the confusion that in many countries arose. People were not sure whose knowledge are we talking about. And so the important thing is for science communication to be a bridge between different knowledge cultures, different knowledge systems, to value and recognize community knowledge, appreciate it, but talk about its limits, also to value and appreciate modern knowledge, but talk about its limits and encourage collaboration, encourage integration, encourage working together. By just saying that this is what the lab has said and you should follow, lab to land programs have failed for last 50 years in all fields, from health to water to agriculture. Because what is in the lab, I am a student of science myself. We all had formulas which worked only when temperature and pressure were constant. They are only constant in the lab. Outside the lab, in the real world, all the other variables come into play, and this is where interaction of knowledge needs to be done. So science communication field also needs decolonization in some ways.
Yes, indeed. And what I often experience or heard from researchers also, they say like, if I communicate my results, people won't listen to me. Maybe local communities, they will listen a little bit if I translate to the right language, etc. But at least politicians, they won't listen to me. They want to hear what I figure out. And that's where I believe scientists are wrong, because you should not communicate to local populations, you should not communicate to politicians, but you should start or first ask them, see what matters for them, where can research contribute, and if you find the topics that matters to them, they will also listen to you. So if you just come with your findings from the lab and try to communicate, this is a big challenge. But if you already engage in a communication that is both way around, so that you listen and you talk, I think that's where you can also reach a communication or open science that matters, that is translated, that addresses the problems of the people they are facing every day. That's where people are also interested in listening to.
Thanks a lot. So there's an interesting question in the chat on research assessment frameworks, and let me connect this up to accountability and beneficiaries. So Fabian, in the guidelines on these principles, point number 4, I think it's accountability of beneficiaries. And you talk there about the upward responsibility towards the funding agencies and the downward responsibility towards the beneficiaries, and that that we need to adjust there. Now, if we look at research assessment frameworks, so what would we need to change in research assessment frameworks to reach that goal, to have a larger accountability for beneficiaries downwards? Because at the moment, my feeling is in research assessment frameworks, as Rajesh mentioned in his opening statement, we look at publications, outputs, and the measurement of accountability for beneficiaries is not really there. So what could be instruments, or what would be instruments which we need to introduce into research assessment frameworks to reach that goal, and then ultimately to be better prepared and to better reach the SDG goals also from the UN?
Yes, I think the whole accountability and also evaluation of research project is a sphere where we still have a long way to go, or rather long way to go. We have also now embarked on this journey, at least in Switzerland. I don't know the situation in Germany, but I assume it's similar. For example, with the DORA declaration, so that funding organizations do not only value the number of publications and the index of the journals where it's published, but also ask what is the impact of research more on a practical level. And there, I think we need to develop also new tools on how to evaluate research projects, research collaborations, to evaluate or take these aspects into consideration. So to evaluate the quality of collaborations. How do researchers ensure that different voices are brought to the table, that different views can be heard? And how do researchers then also assure that the findings, the insights are not only published and evaluated for publishing, but also translated into practice? And there, I think we really need to have evaluation schemes that also pay attention to translation of research into practice, and also include the view from practitioners that are addressed, be it politicians, be it local communities, that it's also seen from their perspective, what is the outcome, the output of research, and to see research more also, or to see the outcome of research and not only the output, so not the number of workshops convened or the number of publications, but how research contributed to actually to societal change or to political change in one or the other way.
Yeah, but then you should really measure also the output, not just kind of you write it in your application, I will do that. So it's a question of then also of indicators for that,
Yes,
not just an affirmation statement in the application that the research is targeting this and that. So I think one needs to work on valuable indicators there so that you can really measure at the end of the day what has been achieved with that regard.
And this is, of course, much more challenging than just count the number of publications, because evaluating the outcome of a research project is much more challenging than the output. So you cannot just count the numbers of publications or workshops, but you have to go on the ground to see how research contributed to change. And this is something I think the evaluation has to come more from a quantitative evaluation to a qualitative evaluation to see really the outcome of research. And this is something to be developed together with practitioners, with researchers, but also with research funders, how to have meaningful evaluation of the quality of research and not just of the quantity of research.
Rajesh, would you like to comment on that, or?
I will give you my experience of working with development programming internationally, like German International Cooperation, Swiss Development Cooperation, in India and internationally as well. 25 years ago, we began to talk about participatory monitoring and evaluation of development projects. Why? Because bulk of the evaluation framework, similar to research assessment framework, was the relationship of measuring the funders' criteria to the recipients. And recipients were typically government departments or agencies or large international NGOs. But the final beneficiaries or ultimate community for whose interest this whole activity was being carried out had no voice, no place. So what we developed was, we said different stakeholders should identify indicators of what will they consider as success of this activity. The indicators for the international funders, the indicators for the implementing agency, and the indicators within the community are likely to be very different. And we should, in our monitoring and evaluation framework, create opportunity for data collection in all those indicators. And just because written data available as part of monitoring reports every quarter can be easily summarized in global headquarters and called evaluation, I think it is incomplete. It does not tell the full story, and it does not treat local communities as stakeholders. After all, if they don't participate in it and it's not useful for them, what's the point of all this exercise? What's the point of all this? The same question I think it is possible to build that if we are clear that there are many stakeholders starting from those for whose improvement in life we are doing this research. Then we can bring them along in the framing of the research, but also in assessment and impact review.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So we've talked a lot about institutions, governments. Our time comes also is rushing. It's a very interesting discussion, I have to see. But maybe we can always wait for governments and do something. But I think what's important maybe, and this would be maybe the last statement I would like to hear from you as an individual researcher. What can I do to change these things and to do first steps? Because we all know if we wait for funding agencies for science policy, the open science policy is long due from the Indian side. So what on an individual level could be steps we can take to overcome the problems and we just has discussed over the last hour? Maybe Rajesh, over to you, and then Fabian, you could add on that.
You want to start?
Well, in my experience, having done it for 45 years and encourage others to do it, is if you believe that your knowledge work is important to make a difference in society. I am a knowledge worker. You may call me researcher or academic or whatever. I'm a knowledge worker. My work is to produce such knowledge that improves the lives of people wherever I am involved in. Then it is important for me to take those lives and those people into account when I am designing my research. It is possible, therefore, within the existing constraints, to think about the value of our work for the communities we are doing. and building relationships with them. Many a times, academic institutions, research institutions in our societies have become isolated from the society. Universities have become boundary walls. And the recommendation of the third World Higher Education Conference in 2022, UNESCO's, the first recommendation was learn to engage with societal actors. This is a recommendation for higher education institutions, which are the places where researchers are produced and reproduced. So look at the world around you, look at the purpose of your knowledge, and find a way to connect it to the lives of people. If you don't have time, find in between. There are a number of intermediaries, connectors, boundary spanners. Our research shows that intermediaries help you connect. You don't have to spend time building rapport with the community, but if you have a rapport with a local development organization, it may have rapport with the community. Have a conversation and allow your knowledge product to be shared in different ways which are amenable, accessible to the community. Otherwise, you feel in some way that your knowledge work has been incomplete. I encourage everybody to think of small steps wherever you are and today as you are, what you can do to make your knowledge work meaningful for whom you are doing this. You will find many answers.
Very nice statement. There is actually not much to add now. But what I believe also as research, especially also being from Switzerland or from Germany, one aspect that really matters is first of all, listen. For me, this is really where it starts. To be humble and not to feel to be the expert, but rather be the learner. Learn from others. What are the challenges you're facing? What are the challenges that matter the most, that are the most pressing challenges? And then to see together with practitioners, with different actors, how could we address these challenges? Where could research contribute to these challenges? And once we come to know what research we want to do, once we have developed, figured out together what research we should do, we should bear in mind that research collaborations can today still be a form of colonization. And we want to decolonize research collaborations. But if research still contributes to the existing power imbalances, still maintains these power imbalances, research, or even if it ignores certain types of knowledge, research is still colonial. And to decolonize research collaborations, we really have to reflect ourselves again. Where is our role? How does this research project or our work contributes to level these power imbalances, to include different voices, and how can our project be a small step towards more equitable collaborations and a more equitable world at the end. So as a researcher, we really have to reflect ourselves also. What are our strengths? What are our privileges that we bring with us? But also where are our limitations? Where are our weaknesses? And how can we work together to really have more than just the additional of single piece, but more to multiple our work together as a research team. So really to work together, to listen, and to be humble also that we are not the experts, but rather the learners.
I maybe would like to add, I mean, I work for a mobility agency. I think step out of your comfort zone, step out of your own research system, travel abroad, connect. We have a huge imbalance. We have a lot of Indians coming to Germany. Would encourage the Germans to go for India, for instance, to see and then to co-create, because we've learned that mutual trust is so important, and to step out of the own comfort zone in a way. Thanks for that very interesting discussion. I will sum it up in a minute, but before we come to that, maybe my last final brief question to you, Rajesh and Fabian. Now, in the whole discussion, if you look up literature, we always talk about the global north and the global south, or very often. So I feel the term itself, it's not good, because it's already, there's something already behind that. So what would be for your term to promote decolonization, leaving the discussion on, or to renaming the discussion on the global north and global south in a more neutral way? Because I mean, if we talk about global north, south, there is the divide inherent already.
You asked me earlier and I didn't respond clearly. We use the phrase knowledge democracy. And why we use that phrase? for several reasons. First of all, by using this phrase, we talk about the democratizing potential of knowledge. We believe knowledge is an important tool for improving lives of our societies, and therefore knowledge can be an important contribution towards democratizing SDGs, climate issues, livelihoods, whatever. But in order for this potential of knowledge to be realized, we have to democratize the very act of knowledge, what we call research, but democratize it by, first of all, recognizing that knowledge resides in many different forms and cultures and locations. Two, by believing in a process of listening and co-construction, as Fabian is saying, believing in it, because if you don't believe in it, you will face hurdles and you'll run away. You will face hurdles because those who do not see themselves as knowledge producers today will run away from you. They will pretend that they don't know anything. So you have to believe in it and work at it. And thirdly, to look at the democratization of institutions of knowledge, because their access to societal actors is very important. Much of the unfortunately problematic defense research historically has been done in closed doors, commissioned through funding where even parliaments were not able to scrutinize. I am not against that research. I am saying that if we believe that knowledge can be a powerful instrument for transforming our societies, from bringing about improvements in SDGs and for preventing further chaotic impact of climate stress, then we must not only change knowledge practices and knowledge cultures, but institutional designs of knowledge cultures. And those institutional designs need to be decolonized, whether you are in Germany or Switzerland or in India and Uganda.
It's very true, yes. For me, also the term North-South is very problematic. At one hand, I like it because it allows us also to acknowledge that there are imbalances and not to learn them to say everybody's equal, everybody's doing the same. And actually, there are imbalances. And there are imbalances that need to be addressed, that need to be considered when we do research collaborations, when we work together. But I rather see it as a continuum between actors with more power, actors with more financial means, more power to structure, to design, and actors with less power. But this continuum is not two blocks, but it's really a continuum between actors with a lot of power and actors with less power. Often local populations, local communities are those with the least power. And we have to acknowledge that these power imbalances are not only between the North and the South, but these power imbalances exist everywhere. And our guide for transboundary research partnerships helps us to deal with these power imbalances and to do or to equal these power imbalances, to do collaborations that are equitable despite these imbalances that exist. And over this term, we can also overcome these power imbalances over time.
And I particularly like the phrase transboundary, because if you look at boundaries, there are boundaries in all our societies.
Yeah.
And some are inside with power, resources, and control, and many are outside. And so when we say transboundaries, it's not geographical boundaries, but it is societal, political, economic boundaries, intellectual boundaries that we have artificially erected, and some of them are feeling like we are in the center and others are in the periphery. The transboundary phrase is very important. Thank you, Fabian.
What a nice statement.
Thank you so much. We were not able to take up a lot of questions in the chat, but all questions related to ethical problems, AI and open data, we will tackle actually in the second panel of today, where we talk about AI on artificial intelligence and impact on institutions. So maybe you watch in there, and all the questions which were related, where can I find research partners, corporations, please look at the platform and look at maybe the panel also on funding, which we have during the end of the day. So I think very interesting discussion, really difficult to sum it up, but give me a try. So I think the terms, my takeaway is we have to acknowledge that we have imbalances and that we have a lot of work to do. Then the second step would be build mutual and trustful relationships, and then come to transboundary research projects, which we co-create and where we then also indicate co-created indicators for these transboundary projects so that we see if it worked out, and hopefully convince the policies that they need to adjust funding frameworks and to bring all these aspects into the frameworks. Rajesh, Fabian, thanks so much for the interesting discussion. It was wonderful to have you with us. It was really insightful. A lot of greetings to Switzerland, where it must be a bit warmer or colder than in Delhi these days. I know that you have important meetings upcoming, Fabian. A lot of success for the conference which you are heading to, and Rajesh for the meeting you are heading into Switzerland. Thanks you so much, and thanks for the insights, and have a nice day, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye. Thank you for the
wonderful transboundary cooperation
Yes,
here.
thank you. Definitely a true transboundary collaboration, indeed.